Hey, what is going on, guys? This is Jason with Jadren Aquatics. Thanks for hanging out with me in the fish room. So today we're going to talk about breeding the Bosemani Rainbow, or as some people pronounce it, Bosemani. I don't know what the correct pronunciation is, but it's one of the two. So these are one of the most easiest fish that there is to breed. The difficult part about these fish is raising the fry up. Because when the fry are first born, they're extremely small. They're like little slivers of glass. So that's the most difficult part. So we'll get to that in just a minute. The first thing we want to do is make a determination what we're going to do about a breeding tank setup, and let's go over the difference between male and female. So we can see right here, the one with the bright orange tail right here, this is a male. The female right here, the female doesn't have much color to her at all. She's just kind of silver, and she's usually quite a bit smaller. There's also one back there in the back too. But when these things get a breeding size, that's when the male starts getting that big orange tail. So they're very easy to tell apart. So the next thing we want to do is we want to get in there and we want to get a breeding tank set up. Now, whenever we set up the breeding tank, we're just going to use normal tank water. Luckily, again, this being an easy to breed fish, we don't have to worry about trying to use rainwater or try to soften the water up. In almost all cases, you can almost always get your tap water to work just fine. So let's go ahead and let's move over there to the breeding tank and see how we got that thing set up. All right, so here we have the breeding tank set up for the Bosemani Rainbows. We've got two males and we've got two females in here, as you can see. We've got them in here in a 20-gallon high. Again, this is too small a tank to be normally keeping these in, but just to breed them for 4 or 5 days, this will be just fine. And you can see we've got a cycled sponge filter back there in the back. The only other thing you'll see in the tank are the multiple spawning mops you see hanging here. You can see these guys are already feel pretty secure about being in this tank. And so what we'll do is we'll come back in here every day, usually just a little bit after the lights go on, and we'll go through these spawning mops and look for eggs so that we can get those things pulled out, get them separated. Now, typically when I pull spawning mops from just these few fish, I'm lucky to maybe get 7 to 10 eggs total a day, even that. So these don't have these massive large spawns, you know, like angelfish, where you have 100 or 200 eggs at a time. But then again, these guys seem to spawn a lot more often, whereas angelfish may only spawn once every 14 days. Or so. So we need to also get them prepped by feeding them good. We're going to feed them some live baby brine shrimp. We're going to feed them some frozen bloodworms, some frozen brine shrimp also. Any other type of live foods that would just does great for them. Whether that's live blackworms or Daphnia or whatever it is that you might have. It just makes it a lot easier getting them prepared and getting those females fattened up with eggs. Okay, so we have got our container here that we're going to put the eggs in, and as you can see, the water's got a little bit of a blue tint to it. That's because I have added just a tiny, maybe half a drop of methylene blue. I usually only like to add enough just to get the water just lightly tinted. And so what I like to do is, just, you can see that egg right there. I just come down here with my fingers. This is fun to do looking through the camera lens. And I just simply pinch it off like that so that it's in my fingers. And then I'll just take it and put it in the water and let it fall off. And it's as easy as that, is sitting there removing all of those eggs. And then what I do is I take this container, because of the fact I've got this whole setup here for growing out a fry, I take these things and I float them in here like this. That way I can control the temperature on it. I've got a heater in here. It's one of the very few tanks that I actually have a heater, and that way I like to keep this a little bit warmer. I have one of these heater controllers on it, and right now you can see the temperature of the tank's at about 79.8 degrees. I keep that controller on there because I don't want my heater to go bad and it kill all my babies. And so we're gonna go ahead and leave that in here. All the water that I put in here was actually tank water. And so what I'll do each day, I'll come in here and I'll top this thing off with some of this water that's actually in here each day to keep the water nice and high and keep the water kind of fresh. And then I'll check it, and again, it takes about 7 days before these eggs will actually hatch. Okay, so here we are with the Bosemani Rainbow fry now. This is about day 9 after we first started putting the eggs in. Remember, we're putting eggs in every single day, and these are how many have already hatched. There's probably 12 or 15 of those. I take them and I suck them out of this container when I see them hatch. So there's still eggs that are in here waiting to hatch. But as they hatch and I see them swimming around, I move them into this container. That way this thing is getting constant water changes, and it's a lot easier to feed them in here. So now we can go ahead and we can start feeding these guys. We'll feed these guys the golden pearls and feed those for about 3 days. And then we'll move them to baby brine shrimp, and then that's when things get easy. Okay, so what I like to use is golden pearls. This is just a mixture of stuff. You can see all the different ingredients they put in it, but this stuff is specially made so that it's extremely small, so even the smallest of fish can actually eat it. And also the way it's prepared is it's made so that this stuff floats on the surface, and again, once you put it in there, it is so tiny you can't see it, but you could, right as you put it in, it'll spread real quickly all over the surface, and then you kind of can't even see it again. I'll link this above so you guys can find this. This stuff comes in all sorts of different sizes. Like this one is 5 to 50 microns. It's the smallest that there is. If you wanted to raise your fry up on this stuff, you could buy all the different sizes in between and just gradually move your fish up. But I like to get mine on baby brine shrimp as fast as possible because that yolk sac that's produced by the brine shrimp is just fantastic for baby fish and their health and their ability to grow fast. And so let's go ahead and let's feed them so you can see kind of how this stuff works. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to remove the golden pearls and put them in a different container that has a lid on it like this one. That way I can screw this on tightly, because anytime I have powdered food that has a Ziploc top, I always forget to tighten it well enough and moisture gets in there and then it funguses and then I lose it all. So I take this and I filled this up, you know, maybe halfway, because this stuff will last forever, and then I take the bag and I seal it good and I put it in the refrigerator so that if I mess this up, I know I've still got some rest in there. Some of the Hikari first bites that you use, that happens to me all the time. And so what I like to do is, this is what one of my subscribers actually showed me, is just this fantastic way of feeding this stuff because it's so fine. What I've done is, you can see I actually had this Velcroed here so that I don't lose it. This is one of my wife's fancy makeup brushes. I think this is actually a Clinique brand, so this is probably like $5,000 or more. So I like to use one of these because this is great for putting on makeup because it picks up really fine dust. So you can just take this and just lightly put it in here, and then you can see how it just gets all over it. And then if you just tap it, it'll just rain that stuff down, and that way you can control easier how much of this stuff you let off. Because if you try to dump this stuff in here into the water and any of those little hard pieces fall in there, they're just going to sink to the bottom. You want this stuff to actually land on the water and float so that the fry can see it, and this stuff will float for a long time. So we'll just dip it in there, get a little bit on there like that, tap it off a little bit so we don't have too much, and then we just come over here to this. So we just come over to it like this, and then we just tap it lightly on the side, and we can see that it just kind of rains the stuff down. Or you can kind of take your finger in it like this and flick it a little bit, and you can just flick it onto the water like that. And again, once that stuff hits the water, it's like almost impossible to see because it's so fine. But this is really just a great way. If you don't have one of these, you can get maybe just like a simple cheap paintbrush, you know, the little small kind like the little kids paint by number. Just something like that. That's a really easy way to distribute this stuff to the fish. Okay, so once you've been feeding your fry the golden pearls, you want to do that at least 3 times a day. Even 4 or 5 times is even better. That way you can get them up to size faster. But usually after about the 3rd day, they'll be big enough for baby brine shrimp. It's good after the 3rd day to kind of give them some baby brine shrimp to watch. You can see in their bellies will get nice and pink whenever they eat some baby brine shrimp, and at that point you know that you can continue to feed them baby brine shrimp, and then it gets extremely easy after that. You feed them the baby brine shrimp 2 or 3 times a day, and those guys are going to take off and grow for you. Now, understand these guys are really slow growing fish. If you look in here, there are some Bosmani fry that are in here that are almost a month old. But as you can see, they're only about 1/4 of an inch long. So these guys are slow growing. So again, you need to keep continually feeding them that brine shrimp. Now once they get about this age, you can feed them once a day if you want to, but you're just going to slow down their growth. But it's not like when they're young and you're feeding the golden pearls. If you miss feeding those to them, you take the chance of them dying of starvation. It can and it will happen. You can notice also I've also moved them out of the smaller container and put them into a 10-gallon tank. It's just easier that way. If you don't have the room to do that, it's not something that's necessarily critical. But one of the things, if you're going to continue to breed your Bosmani, you're going to be constantly removing eggs almost every single day. Now what that causes, you're going to have babies at all different stages. So if you're continually moving eggs and then you're continually moving the fry into the same container as the other fry, you're going to have ones that are different sizes. So you're pretty much going to be tapping in some of that golden pearls almost every single day, just to make sure that the smallest of those guys have something to eat. So it's a little bit more tricky dealing with these guys than maybe like angelfish, where you get all the fry at one time. But again, it's just easier if you're feeding them the golden pearls and feeding them the baby brine. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Again, this is a really easy fish to breed, just a hard one to get grown up to size. If you've got any questions or comments, be sure and leave them down below. So thanks again, guys, and God bless.